Welcome to this virtual worship service. My name is Alia Shinbrough, and I am the student minister this year for the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock. This congregation is ministered to by the Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore, the Reverend Jennifer Brower, and the Reverend Jay Brooks. Though we remain physically distant to preserve public health and shield those most vulnerable among us from illness, and though we may come to this community seeking, surviving with raw and weary hearts, we are still a deeply connected religious people. We still seek and lift up wisdom from many traditions that remind us of our human capacity for resilience, our ability to adapt to the unforeseen and sometimes the unimaginable, to have courage, to hold on to hope. We still seek to restore our collective memories of the quest for liberation that so many of our communities have sought and still seek today. As Unitarian Universalists who come from many religious backgrounds, many cultures, and many traditions, we work hard to hold and honor the variety of religious beliefs and practices to be found among any one of us, within and outside our congregation. In learning from and about each other, we work to cultivate curiosity rather than certainty, to ask rather than assume, and to lift up the voices of people to tell their own stories. We honor where we each come from, as well as where we are going together. We work to create communities of belonging together, not just communities of believing together. Today's multi-generational virtual worship service recognizes and celebrates the Jewish festival of Passover through song, story, ritual, and the generosity of some UUCSR congregants to share some of their precious memories. As you are moved, we invite you to move, to dance, to sing along with the words on your screen, to engage with the service in whichever way makes you feel most connected, and which liberates and sustains your spirit. If you feel connected to some of what you experience in this or other services, we hope you will consider joining us at coffee hour or connecting with other programming, including the UUCSR virtual Seder this evening. More events can be found through our website's calendar. We are so glad and so grateful that you have chosen to join us today, to co-create this sacred space together. Let us worship.
In ancient times, they said, Dayenu. It would have been enough to have been spared the plagues. It would have been enough to have been freed from slavery. It would have been enough to have had food in the desert. Now we question, when will it be enough again? Dayenu. Will it be enough to stay home? Will it be enough if we are deemed essential as we are made to work? Will it be enough to wear a mask as we go to the grocery, to the office, to the gas station? Will it be enough to keep us well in the midst of a plague that has not passed over? Now we wonder, worry, wish for answers. Dayenu. It would have been enough, and it will be enough again. If the story of Passover is told and teaches us how to live in this time, it will be enough. If the stories of our ancestors bring us hope for tomorrow, it will be enough. If we join together in remembering that we all come from people who have survived again and again, it will be enough this year as it is each and every year. Dayenu. It will be enough that we are together today. Come, let us worship together.
The Jewish festival of Passover commemorates the Exodus narrative in the Hebrew Bible, the journey from the certainty of oppression and slavery to the welcome unknown of freedom and liberation. Exodus follows the path of the prophet Moses, who, along with his siblings Aaron and Miriam, and the Hebrew slaves who toiled in Egypt, together demanded their freedom from a cruel and unrelenting Pharaoh. It is a story filled with wonders, both beautiful and terrible. It is a story filled with familiar specters, specters of fear, of scarcity, danger, death, and despair, plagues as well as miracles, but also escape and resilience and survival, and ultimately sweetness, song, dancing, and joy. For 8 days and 8 nights, those observing Passover traditions may eat matzah rather than any leavened bread in memory of the ancestors who fled before their bread had fully risen. Families and communities may gather for seders, the ritual meal that teaches the story of the Exodus. The ritual narrative begins with recounting the horrors of slavery in Mitzrayim, a word which I've heard some Jewish friends and colleagues translate more broadly as a place of narrowness, rather than the physical land of Egypt itself. The story moves through 10 plagues brought down by God through the prophet Moses onto the rulers and onto the people of Egypt. The story moves to the miraculous parting of the Red Sea to enable the final escape of the mixed multitude of people who then celebrated their liberation with dance and song on the banks. To participate in Passover by attending a Seder is not just to hear and learn and tell the story, but to write yourself into it. Not just to imagine some ancestor long ago escaping narrowness, escaping slavery in Egypt, but to experience it yourself through the emotional arc of the ritual meal. Passover is a multi-generational ritual experience of memory. From the food to the songs to the act of gathering around a table, even a virtual table. This celebration connects those who encounter it not only with the past, but with present and future. It is a ritual practice of remembrances evoked by taste as much as narrative. To move along this well-trodden path from narrowness and bondage to liberation and renewed community over the course of an evening. Today, we will hear different voices, visions, stories, and memories which call us to remember ourselves into this journey towards liberation together, again and again.
It is counterintuitive that Passover, Pesach in Hebrew, with the added work for me of days of spring cleaning and cooking special foods, is my favorite religious celebration. Because it is commemorated in the home of the Seder meal, it is a time for entire families to come together, creating connection, warmth, and year after year of wonderful memories. Additionally, I observe the discipline to follow the commandment to eat matzahs and only foods verified as kosher for Passover for 8 nights and 8 days. Some of my most vivid memories of Passover's past is of making gefilte fish with my mother. Picture pounds of raw fish on the table, placed on the wooden board, to be shredded with a knife to be sure that every single one of the bones were removed. then grinding the filleted fish with raw onions and adding eggs. The pot, boiling away with bones and skin to enrich the broth, welcoming the individual fish balls added with lots of sliced carrots. Memorable taste also, really delicious. Though my family celebrated Passover each year in our home with dinner guests and a traditional meal, there was never a Seder. Until, wanting to give our children a Jewish education, my daughter Jeanette went to Sunday school at age 6. There she learned about Seders and asked to have one in our home. She even had the rabbi phone me to instruct me about observances. From that time on, both Seders were celebrated in our home, usually with more than 20 people attending. I cooked everything that was served, made the harosith, except homemade gefilte fish. For the past 28 years, lucky me, my wonderful son and daughter-in-law host the first night Seder in their home, attended by all the siblings, grandchildren, grandparents. And as members of UUCSR, my husband and I have been honored to lead the second night Seder several years ago. It will be my pleasure to be one of the leaders with Barry Noble this year. As I've said, when I think of Pesach, I reflect on a lifetime of wonderful, warm, and loving memories.
As we explore the celebration of Passover, this ritual built around memory and teaching the narrative of the Exodus through the shared meal, we know how critical food is to nourish and sustain our bodies, as well as our spirits and our traditions. Access to food is a matter of each of our very survival, and far too many people go hungry each and every night. Donations made today will go to Island Harvest, which has food pantries across Long Island. They carry out their mission to end hunger and reduce food waste on Long Island through their good works to deliver millions of pounds of good surplus food to a network of 570 Long Island-based food pantries, soup kitchens, and other nonprofit organizations that offer feeding services to those in need. This pandemic has gone on so long, and in this contemporary time of affliction, the need is greater than ever. Please join us in supporting this good work, to feed those who are hungering, to nourish people's bodies, and to liberate people's spirits from the constraints of food insecurity, hunger, and malnutrition. There are 3 ways to contribute: by sending a text, by using the donate link on our website. Be sure to choose special collection, or by using PayPal. Please give as generously as you are able in this time of overwhelming need. Thank you for your contribution to breaking these modern chains. Thank you for your investment in our collective liberation. Thank you for joining us on this journey today, supporting each other through this time of uncertainty and scarcity, so that we all may get free together.
Growing up Jewish, Passover has always been one of the most joyful holidays that we celebrated as a family each year. We gathered together to retell the story of how the Jews became liberated from slavery through their exodus from Egypt in ancient times. My parents always presented Passover as a time to celebrate freedom from oppression for all peoples. Although never members, I've always felt that they were true Unitarians at heart. Each year, it would bring to mind the struggles my grandparents faced as newly arrived immigrants in the United States. They escaped persecution from the pogroms of Russia at the turn of the century. I would recollect the many survivors of the Holocaust who lived to tell their stories of bravery and unthinkable horror. With pride and love, we sat with our Grandpa Willie, my husband Jerry's dad, along with Grandma Irene, also a surviving Jew from Hungary. Both had keenly sought refuge to this country. Willie had the foresight to escape from pre-Nazi Germany, and Uncle Benno, his only surviving brother of 5, emigrated to Israel, making a new life where he could build his future family. This was our personal story, but we were always made cognizant of the endurance of people from all nationalities and religions who had survived persecution. Through the years, our Haggadah, or narrative of the Passover story, continually reflects the modern-day recognition of relevant issues, including women's rights, racial equity, and equality for LGBTQ communities, to name a few. Passover has always been a tradition to honor freedom, escape from subjugation, and to celebrate a more hopeful and humane world. In the KESSLER household, our celebration was far from traditional. Having 4 young children, all close in age, the scene was always a little chaotic. We told an abbreviated story, shared the items from the Seder plate, and enjoyed delicious food, wine, singing, and much laughter. As the youngest, my daughter Julie was always honored in reciting the 4 questions, which she was proud to learn in Hebrew class. The best part for the kids, though, was the joy and reward in finding the wrapped matzah, or afikomen, at the end of the night.
Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Our multi-generational story today is written by J. Wallace Skelton and illustrated by Justin Alves. It is titled The Last Place You Look. It was Pesach, Passover, and the whole family gathered at the Bubby's apartment for the Seder. We had to squeeze in, but as Bubby Rose says, love makes enough room. We blessed and ate the green vegetables, and Bubby Ida Flora broke the middle matzah. Later, she said, looking at all the children, you will need to find this or we won't be able to end the meal. There will be prizes, added Bubby Rose, as Bubby Ida Flora walked into the kitchen, taking the middle matzah, the afikomen, out of sight. The Seder continued. There were funny parts and sad parts. Hot, spicy horseradish and sweet charoset. Oro and Sura sang a song about slavery. And we talked about what we can do to bring peace and justice in the world. We ate. The Bubbies had cooked for days. There were a lot of people, but there was even more food. Abigail declared that the matzo ball soup was the best ever, and both Bubbies grinned from ear to ear. When everyone had eaten their fill, and a little bit more, Bubby Rose announced it was time for the children to find the afikomen. All the children got up from the table and began to search. Laurel searched along the top of the bookshelf, carefully feeling each book. She didn't find the afikomen, but she did find a little pouch. Aha, she said, holding the pouch high. It must be in here. But inside the pouch were bracelets, not matzah. Zach searched the kids' stay-over bedroom, climbing over coffee tables and chairs. He didn't find the afikomen, but he did find a little locked metal box. Is it in here? He asked. No, said Bubby Ida Flora in a happy voice. But now our ancestors can join us at the Seder. And she opened the tin and took out the old family photos. Delta searched behind and under the couch. She even made everyone sitting on the couch get up so she could reach under the cushions. As she slipped her hand in, she heard a crunch. I found it, she shouted. But the crunch turned out to be Bubby Rose's old reading glasses. They've been gone so long I got new ones, she exclaimed. Oro searched under the table. He was sure he would find the afikomen taped to the underside of the table. He found an envelope. This year I win, he said from under the tablecloth. But inside the envelope were baseball tickets, not matzah. I still think I won, he said. Asher searched through the pockets of the coats in the hall. There were 19 coats. He didn't find the afikomen, but he did find $5.35 in change. Can I keep it? He asked. The grown-ups agreed it should go in the tzedakah tin instead. Zip searched the kitchen. They'd seen Bubby Ida Flora take it in there, and were sure that's where it was. They didn't find the afikomen, but they did find dessert. Zip tasted the chocolate-dipped orange peel, ate a fat macaroon, and didn't say anything. Sura searched low to the floor. She climbed into the pot cupboard in the kitchen and looked into people's shoes. She didn't find the afikomen, but she did find out that some people need to put powder in their shoes. Yuck. Nobody found the afikomen. Bubby Ida Flora looked worried. I hid the afikomen, but I'm not sure where, she said quietly. Well, said Bubby Rose, it'll be in the last place you look. Zach searched the bathroom, even though he was pretty sure it would not be there. He didn't find the afikomen, but he did find a goldfish. We were told a pet would help us get more exercise, said Bubby Ida Flora, but it doesn't seem to work. Everyone laughed. Delta looked at Levi. Did you eat the afikomen? No, Laurel answered for Levi. A guide dog would never do that. Well, said Delta, could she sniff it out then? But Levi was Laurel's guide dog, not a sniffer dog. She wasn't going to be able to solve the mystery. Oro remembered that Bubby Ida Flora was wearing an apron when she broke the middle matzah and went looking for that, but he couldn't find the apron either. How can so many things go missing in so small a space? Asked Zip. Asher searched through the laundry, but couldn't find either the apron or the afikomen. Aaron said, "It's getting late. Maybe we should all just sit down again and finish the Seder without the afikomen." "Without the afikomen?" everyone shouted at once. But they had looked everywhere, and it was nowhere to be found, so they sat back down. As Sura sat down, she heard a crunch. She was sitting on Bubby Ida Flora's apron, and the afikomen was still in the pocket. "Ah," said Bubby Ida Flora, "I couldn't remember where I hid it because I didn't hide it at all. The apartment hid it for me." "I told you," said Bubby Rose with a wink. "It would be in the last place you look." Everyone laughed. She opened the pouch that had been in the first place they'd searched and gave each child a bracelet with their names on it, engraved and in Braille. And now you can see the whole family gathered at the Seder, shouting together, "Next year in freedom."
Good morning. I am Richard BOCK, Shelter Rock member for almost 6 decades. I was born into a conservative Jewish family, was bar mitzvahed and confirmed at Temple Bethel in Stamford, Connecticut. I drifted away from my family religion when I was in college. But when my firstborn son was old enough and my then wife and I realized that we needed religious education, the search began. We found the Unitarian congregation at Plandome. The rest is history. I feel that my Jewish heritage has helped me be the person that I am. I never returned to Judaism or going home for significant religious events, but we did make the trip back to my family's gatherings each year for the annual Passover Seder. Year after year, my wife Claire and I would attend and participate. As the eldest in the family, I declined to lead the Seder, but volunteered to hide the afikomen for the youngsters to steal. Also for many years as a musician, I've assisted the Shelter Rock Seder. Recently, during a Zoom meeting, the word tradition was discussed. I feel that celebrating Passover, the Exodus story, is a tradition that must never be forgotten. So, as we approach this year's virtual Seder at Shelter Rock, I raise a glass to the continued tradition celebrating Passover. Let us also celebrate the exodus from the COVID pandemic. L'chaim.
Passover has always been one of the Jewish rituals that I've observed. When I was a child, we sat around the Passover table in our apartment in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. My father at the head of the table, and the only one of us who could read Hebrew. He read the service entirely in Hebrew. It went on way too long, and my brother and I had no clue about what was said, the story, or the meaning of Passover. Why was parsley, an egg, and a lamb shank on our Seder plate? We read the traditional Haggadah that referenced male deities. We used that hallowed version of the Haggadah that thousands of Jews throughout the land of Brooklyn used 40 years ago, brought to us by Maxwell House Coffee. Maxwell House family of coffees, good to the last drop. Marketing at its finest. Skip ahead many, many years. With my wife Jane and my stepchildren Dan and Josh, we celebrated at our house. My mother-in-law Barbara came in from Manhattan, and my parents Sina and Paul came in from Brooklyn. We upgraded our Haggadah to one that reflected our Jewish and UU values that the boys learned about in their UURE classes at Shelter Rock. This was our newly fashioned Haggadah, complete with illustrations. We all took turns reading a part of the story of the Pharaoh and Moses leading our people to freedom, and we sang songs. My mother-in-law Barbara was not Jewish, but she and my mom really loved our modern ritual and spending time with the boys at Passover, the only times the boys wore yarmulkes. Barbara gifted us a beautiful hand-painted Seder plate. Which we have loved and used ever since. Barbara and my parents passed away a while ago. Dan now lives in California, and Josh lives in Liverpool, England, with his British wife, Sarah. Our home gathering is much smaller now, but every time I look at our Seder plate, it brings me back to the warm and loving times we spent celebrating Passover with our family. This year, we'll carry on the tradition and attend the UU Zoom. Even on Zoom, I know that spending time with my congregation friends and family will be special. So I say, next year in Jerusalem, and I also say, next year on the UU grounds.
Our closing words are those of Rabbi Jill Hammer and are featured in the Velveteen Rabbi's Haggadah for Pesach. Yet maybe it's in slow breaking that wholeness happens. The bud of the apple tree fragments into beauty, and the stem of the iris tears its way through the soil. The heart breaks as it grows. You could call that wholeness, the movement of life towards a fuller version of itself. The egg releasing its core into the world, the tree lurching its way towards branches. It's the splitting of the sea that lets us out of Egypt. Severed from the old self we thought invincible, we run toward a future that shatters the moment we enter it, becoming the multiple and unknown present. Bless the world that breaks to let you through it. Bless the gift of the grain that smashes its molecules to feed you over and over.